Welcome back to Fair's Fair! Not quite a standard Fair review, as I'll be writing this entirely from memory of what I saw in theaters, which took way longer than I thought it would. So without further ado, time to review Five Nights at Freddy's. Not the game, or the other game, or the spin-off game, or the other spin-off game, or the DLC to the other spin-off game. I'm talking about the movie. Now, for all of the fans who came here looking for a glowing review of their favorite movie, let me start by saying I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad it's making money. I'm glad it might be getting sequels, or probably is. I'll buy the physical release just in case child murder is declared too evil for media and that part of the plot is censored on all digital devices. Buy physical media while you still can. I offer all these compliments to appease the FNaF fans in the hope that they understand that I love the movie and all the games that I watched Chibidoki play, and with that being said, it's not a great movie. It's actually not even a good horror movie because they forgot the scary. So let's embrace the scooping room of our souls and pull the meat out of this movie to see what's up and what potential could be in the sequels. Let's start with the plot, shall we? Five Nights at Freddy's is the tale about how this guy got flipped, turned upside down. So turn on all your cameras, just sit right there, watch the security of the home of Freddy Fazbear. Okay, I'll stop that. Our protagonist starts as mall security before beating up a child's father right in front of the kid. Now, he's not just flexing on the child because children need to be humbled. His little brother was actually kidnapped when he was younger, and he has been using lucid dreaming in an attempt to remember the kidnapper's face. Unfortunately, inability to get over past trauma does not excuse violently assaulting an innocent man, so I had to change my identity. But for him, he was just fired. Then he went to a specialist to help him find a job. This specialist reacts very strangely upon seeing his last name, and becomes insistent on him becoming a night guard at Freddy Fazbear's. I'm not sure why the animatronics decided to kill the current security guard, but they do. I can't quite remember the order here, so it's possible that Mr. Afton went there to create the opening he had just advertised. Oh yeah, in case you were asleep through the start of the movie and all the signs, both meta and not, the career counselor is William Afton. But at this point I was on board. Then we has a subplot with an evil aunt trying to get custody of his much younger sister so the aunt can get free government money. I'm sure she'll serve as more than just an unrelated nuisance to be easily killed off with no repercussions. Continuing, much like real life, he needs a job, so he eventually decides to take the FNaF job. On his first night there, he looks around and not much happens. The movie doesn't use the first game's excuse of the animatronics needing to move around to keep the servos from locking up, so it's not really scary, since they just kinda stand there. They're good at that. They do it a lot in the movie, which is a bit of an issue for this movie and its supposed horror genre. But he does start to lucid dream, because sleeping on the job that you desperately need is smart. This time, while he's in the forest in his dreams, he sees the ghosts of the children who died. In standard ghost fashion, of course, they are no help, but do show the ability to injure him in the dream in such a way that it affects him IRL. Luckily, there seems to also be a nearby exposition-character-police.exe who knew he was there and knew he was new to the job, but that doesn't raise any red flags with him. She also seems to give cryptic warnings that the main character also doesn't ask many questions about until much later. But a horror movie needs some bodies, so Evil Aunt hires some expendable flesh to mess the place up and get him fired. One of them is also the babysitter who watches the younger sister. They all die in various ways, bordering on PG-13. You know, premarital kissing, unprotected hand-holding, etc. Except the babysitter, she got bit in half. I'm sure that will have long-lasting consequences. Now that the threat has been established, I can't wait for the build-up of it becoming threatening to the main characters. So with the babysitter dead, our main character, who you might have noticed I forgot the name of, and I don't want to look up because this is supposed to be from memory, he decides that the best course of action is to bring his little sister to work with him. He goes into Dream World, and she, being a child in a horror movie, does the one thing he says not to. She goes off on her own. He hears her scream and runs after her to see what's up. Unfortunately, it isn't the child being torn apart, it's the aspect of horror being torn apart. She's fine, just playing with the ghost kids in the animatronics. I cannot tell you the sheer number of horror basics that are violated here. I realize that they aren't hard or perfect rules, but they very much were required if you wanted this to be scary. The animatronics are in full view, fully lit, playing around, building forts, and not being a threat threat when not commanded to do so. I'll come back to the movie's lack of scary later, probably a few times, but for now I'll leave it at, this was a major undercut of the potential horror from the whole concept they're working with here. The movie continues from there with some back and forth between the main character and a cardboard cutout with the writer's notes on it. Then a lot of completely tensionless time passes, and the ghost kids in his lucid dream start asking him to give up his sister in exchange for living in a dream with, for all he knows, an imaginary version of his brother. Despite knowing that these are ghosts and that it's a dream, he decides that this is a good deal for some reason. He does change his mind quickly, but he upsets the ghost Goonies, so they scratch him up in a way that doesn't seem to matter for the rest of the movie. But he was smart enough to leave his sister at home that day. Unfortunately, Golden Freddy, who I only recognized because he was missing an eye, goes to his house to collect his little sister. Oh yeah, Freddy G also kills the evil aunt who wanted to get custody of the sister. Main character had asked her to babysit because he couldn't get in touch with his normal sitter. Funny enough though, that death never comes up again. We're moving into the final act now. The screenplay's walkie-talkie finally comes clean, explaining that all those kids were killed by her father, who sealed their bodies inside the animatronic suits. He also somehow has them bound to his will, and he's still alive and kicking. So now they must go save the sister. Using tasers to disable the animatronics, they save her, only to be cornered by William Afton himself in the yellow bunny suit. He beats the main character like he owes him money, fuck, I'd just stay down at that point. But his sister gets through to the kids by removing a drawing of the yellow bunny helping them and replacing it with a drawing of it killing them. This breaks his hold on them. They sort of foreshadowed this earlier with the sister's drawings, but it still feels contrived as fuck. The animatronics don't really do anything from there, except the cupcake which bites a hole in William's suit, causing the spring locks to snap and crush/impale him. He goes out with the one-liner known from the games of, "I always come back." Oh yeah, he also stabbed his/the storyboard's daughter, and she's in a coma at the end. Now let's break this down piece by memory-driven piece. First, the plot. It meanders a bit, and has some fat that definitely could have been trimmed. Namely, the evil aunt seems completely unnecessary. She isn't needed to push the main character to get a job. Bills do that just fine. The animatronics are probably valuable, so some thugs breaking in after the old security guard left isn't that hard to write in. She added nothing except for runtime and drama that goes nowhere. She also adds some after effects that this movie seems to have no intent on addressing. Like, how the fuck is he a free man at the end? The body of the woman threatening to take him to court was found murdered in his home, and his workplace is full of bodies too. He admitted to the sister's teacher that he didn't think he'd win in court, and he was fired for violently assaulting an innocent man. Bro, lube up, you're fucked. Oh yeah, one of the bodies is also his babysitter. Even if William's shitty exploits come to light, the only living person on his side is in a coma, and I don't think a judge will buy the ghost children in robots explanation. The movie also explained that the animatronics had to return to their charging station. It was kind of a background thing, if I'm remembering correctly, but apparently they can walk all the way to the main character's house and Uber back without needing a charge. Other than that, I don't think I can remember anything resembling a plot hole, just that the plot seemed to meander. Like, they didn't really have any direction when it wasn't involving one of the expected Nights at Freddy's. I'm not sure where else I'd put this bit, but I'll put it here. The genre. It's supposed to be horror, but it just isn't scary in any way. While it's based on a game that centers around a tense atmosphere and jump scares, it doesn't really have either. The games also add the element of helplessness by essentially locking you in this place. No one is ever really locked in except for the first security guard. The first security guard being hunted was on the right track. The main character's first night was a good start. The yellow bunny suit reveal had some gravitas. But the animatronics in full light playing around and building blanket forts just kills the intimidation factor. Then the next time they're a threat, the main character is armed with rather effective weapons and they mostly just stand there. Hell, after they turn on William, not to be confused with turning on William.
Oh my god, he's so hot!
Oh yeah. Call me.
The only one who does anything is the cupcake that bites his suit once. This all in combo with the meandering story outside of Fazbear's adds up to a complete lack of danger or foreboding atmosphere. I get that they didn't want to go full R rating, but this just isn't scary. And that's not good for a movie built onto a horror franchise. But characters can really save a movie, so let's try talking about a few of them. First is the main character. His name doesn't stick with me, but that might actually be my problem, not everyone else's. He was rather easy to follow either way. He's using lucid dreaming to try and see his brother's killer. He is therefore very vested in not letting children be kidnapped. So he's maybe a threat to Epstein's old business. He's also a threat to the parents of misbehaving children. After that setup, he promptly loses focus. Even at the risk of losing a job he desperately needs to keep his sister safe, he continues to sleep at work. So I guess he foreshadows his likelihood to put her at risk in favor of trying to fix a past mistake. I still don't know why he agreed to swap his living sister for a dream version of his brother when he should know full well that he's giving something up for nothing. But he switched back immediately, I guess. Overall, his connection to William Afton seems to line up okay. Also, he's probably going to jail because of the aforementioned hilariously damning evidence. Speaking of the sister, I think the movie could have skipped her altogether and just increased the amount of time they spent in Freddy's. She doesn't really arc, she participates in the part of the movie that shatters its attempt at horror, and her ending the control with the picture is downright anticlimactic. The heroes, and namely her, didn't really plan for their success or use their knowledge with intent, she just happened upon all the tools she needed sitting right there, and was ignored long enough to win. This also brings up the question of, why did she think that that would work? Last I checked, only the main character was actually told about the significance of pictures. That was an awfully good guess on her part to figure out the exact relation of how he controlled them, based on very little data, while still being a child. Too bad CPS will be taking her due to her guardian almost certainly being convicted for murder. Now for the voice of timely exposition. I mean the policewoman. I've been rather mean to her and I want to clarify that she was played as well as anyone could have, so I'm not blaming the actress. But God, this character was just not a character, that is. She only ever gave the info needed to push the plot forward, never gave the info she was asked for, was never questioned about her intricate knowledge, hid just enough that the main character would stay, somehow got a powerful job that perfectly covers an area, but that job never seems to matter, and had a snap to threatening to shoot the main character. And even that never sets off any alarms. It's like everyone is acutely aware of her importance to getting the plot moving. Her actions are almost the sole contribution to the direction of the plot. Her decisions are the linchpin, with the whole rest of the plot circling around them. Even if you could rationalize her actions, she's still very obviously a tool of the writer for the plot. The writer's hand needs to be better disguised and more spread out among the characters. In fact, if I were to give a recommendation, taking some of the writer's hand out from her character and putting it into the main character would give him a little bit more agency and give him a few more decisions that could be noted within the story. As for the thugs, they can stay nobodies as bodies. Using random characters to establish a threat is pretty normal, if a bit redundant, after, the security guard. It would be better if the scene lasted a bit longer and involved more stalking, rather than seeing each animatronic once, followed by an off-screen death. Other than that, the spare bodies weren't a problem really, so I guess I'm fine with them. The bisection was a nice touch to show how strong the animatronics are. Then, the aunt. She served no purpose. Worse than that, she harmed the perspective of it being real or in an active world. Verisimilitude is the appearance of something being real. The aunt does not vibe with this goal. Her being dead on the floor of the main character's house is the end of him, but she also serves as a lot of time that could have been spent on the focus of the movie. Both her and the sister feel like they did more harm than good. Shuffle both of them and their plot thread back into your deck of filler cards, and expand the killer animatronics that your entire series is based around. The Ghost Kids needed to be a threat. They didn't need to be in full view, fully lit, building blanket forts for fun. You've broken almost every rule of how to make something scary. They don't have much volition of their own, and when they did act freely, they just stood there or fucked the horror tag off of the movie. I guess the cupcake gets a gold star for doing something at the end there, while everyone else did such a good React streamer impression that I half expected them to dox Jack's films. So yeah, could have been scary. Last but not least, William Afton. Honestly, he was pretty good as far as this movie goes. He was scary in the finale reveal and had a decent criticism shield. Namely, he's a serial killing madman. Him hiring the brother of the kid he killed isn't a great idea normally, nor is holding onto the bodies in a place of said killings. But this makes sense in a way. Not only has he seemingly developed a bit of a god complex after learning he had created an army of ghost children, but serial killers have often made large missteps in the name of their obsession or whims that led to their capture. Their reasoning doesn't always make much sense. I believe that he became more obsessed with the place and method of killing due to it literally trapping the souls in his control. That would probably give me a god complex. He might even start to think himself all-powerful and start experimenting with just how to trap souls. But there is one line that doesn't seem to belong. When he flipped the script and exposition to his daughter for once, he said that she was to keep the main character from getting answers and kill him if he got too close. But why did you bring him there then? Didn't you just say how much you liked the idea of killing him since you killed his brother? All she did was give him answers. Did you not know that? Were you not keeping track of these things? That would seem contrary to your established desires. This line feels very weirdly out of place. Like they needed him to say something and couldn't think of what, so they just threw in some generic villain dialogue. Minus that line, I like him. With it, I'm no longer sure what he was even doing. It's infuriating because he fits together nicely in my head otherwise. Moving on from the characters, we'll begin our wrap-up. I liked the sets, the few that there were. The practical animatronics looked nice, if a tad immobile. The genre went out the window painfully fast. It was definitely made with a love for the franchise. They had to change a bunch of lore, as this is supposed to be a trilogy, but they didn't seem to know how to make the horror aspect work in the new medium of a movie along the way. Then they added in Blumhouse's specialty of having no clue what to do with characters or runtime when not actively involving the bad guy, which is not great for someone getting into the property through the movie. But for those who already know the series, it has what you would want in an altered lore on the big screen, with lots of tidbits for the fans to pick up on and some music that the fans can enjoy for a while. More of a nod to the fans than a functioning horror movie. I won't pass judgment on that idea. If that's what they want to make, then more power to anyone who isn't a remake or Marvel movie at this point. Now, if I had to talk about what the sequels should do to improve, and I do, as failure results in immediate termination, I would recommend a few things. 1. Remember that there is a whole world that your story exists in. There's people and law enforcement that have to be considered both during and after the primary events. People will question where the evil aunt went. He had to call her over, so there's a phone record. He's fucking sunk. I can't bring that up enough. This movie forgot the whole world outside of Freddy's. 2. Horror. Make your monster scary again. Suspense, atmosphere, foreboding. No blanket forts, no dance parties. 3. Maintain the content for the fans. You can't afford to lose them. Adding more to the lore that actually relates to the focus and constants of your series couldn't hurt. 4. Can the side plot if you have to. If you can't improve the characters and side plots, then turn towards the main plot and events. Take Lil Sis and the custody battle, Outback, and Old Yeller them. Though with that pretty much tied up, hopefully the next movie will focus more on the namesakes. Frankly, I think they could have axed his family feud and had him pursuing his brother's killer. Give him no family so he doesn't have a reason to leave, then he'd be obsessed with finding the killer so he has a reason to stay. I feel like that direction would fit better while keeping all the best parts of what we did get. All in all, I'll watch the sequels. I like the world and the lore. I want to support people who actually like the lore of the series they're making something about. Imagine that, right? As much as I criticize it, the movie wasn't worried about becoming a cultural phenomenon, it didn't preach, it wasn't trying to comment on society. The movie knew what it was and it wasn't trying to be anything else. With some weird side plots into an evil aunt. They just need to work on the execution. The way movies get better starts with people who actually want to make a movie and or actually like the thing they're making movies about, instead of having downright contempt for it. I realize that that's normally pretty obvious, but the fact is that this movie has that, and it's not all that common anymore. Certainly not in big studio productions. So that's my review of Five Nights at Freddy's, made entirely from memory. I hope I'm remembering right, but I'm sure people will let me know if I'm not. Let me know down in the comments as you like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Did you like the movie? Do you agree with my analysis? Did I miss or misremember something? Remember, I did like the movie and I'm absolutely tickled that it is outperforming the Marvels. But if you're mad that I dared to criticize FNaF at all, even though I support it and its sequels being made, you too can go down to the comments to be entertainingly angry. One of them is also the babysitter who watches the Youngle sister. Yeah, she's a Youngle.